Do you know where you are? Do you know where you are?
This is Appetite for Distortion.
And welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode 60. Wow, episode 60. It is Brando. Thanks so much for joining us. This is so cool. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll be speaking with Johnny Kelly, drummer of Hookers and Blow with Dizzy Reed, Typo Negative, Danzig, a ton of other bands, Silvertomb, A Pale Horse Named Death. We're going to talk about all of that stuff. But first, I got to introduce my co-host for episode 60, and actually also my friend. I've had co-hosts of different fans. Of course, Remco from the Netherlands we spoke to, Sir Kev from Ireland. But this is a friend and a fan. This would be Big John Stud, John Muir. What's going on, my buddy?
Hello, friend. How are you? That's my Jim Nance impression, by the way.
I'm not your buddy, guy.
I'm not your friend, buddy.
I thought you were going to do that.
Not your buddy, pal.
There you go.
Oh.
So I asked John Muir, not the famous John Muir, because he's been dead for hundreds of years. It was John Muir Day yesterday, right? Technically?
Yes, it was.
Yes. We tried
104th anniversary of his death, but no, it was yesterday is the anniversary of his birthday, which became Earth Day, and also John Muir Day by President Reagan back in 1983.
Who was he?
He was a naturalist and writer and amateur scientist and inventor, and the man responsible, after one camping trip with President Theodore Roosevelt, with inspiring the 26th president of the United States to set up the national park system.
Wow.
So he is the father of the national parks.
Wow. Well, you don't have quite that resume, but you're still...
No, I don't. Not even close. And I don't even have the beard that he does. I've walked nowhere that he has. I've stood in front of the home he was born in Dunbar, Scotland. That's the closest I have been to connecting himself and myself, other than we share the same name.
I gotcha. Well, we're gonna call you Stud because that's your nickname from college. Maybe we'll get into the meeting a little bit later on, just because to have two Johns on the show might get a little confusing. So we're gonna call you Stud. So Stud
That works.
Yeah. So Stud and I, we met back at Hofstra University when we both went to college. And the reason why I asked John to come on the show, one of the reasons, is because he's such a huge Typo Negative fan, and I can credit him. Yeah, I can credit you really for getting me heavily into them, because at the time, of course, Guns N' Roses, Green Day, but there was a lot of the heavier, darker music that I just wasn't into yet. Now, you helped me get into Tool and Motorhead and, of course, Typo, as I mentioned. So, I definitely credit you on being, influence on me on my musical taste later on in my life. And also...
And you're welcome.
Yes. And I've said this maybe in passing on the show before, where I've had, I have friends that listen to this podcast and I tell them not to, because I just think, because you're my friend, I don't ask people to listen to me ever. Even when I've been on different radio stations, I find it weird. I'm just not that person. Maybe as far as, what do you think of this joke or something like that? But I never ask anyone to listen. But the fact that you have listened to all 60 AFD shows is insanity to me. And maybe we've heard a little bit of the background noise. You put your right on cue. Right on cue. Right on cue. Little Finn, right?
That's Finn. Someone took a nasty step off of his little step stool, and he's very upset.
Aw, it's okay. So
you're okay.
This is gonna be.
You are okay, pal.
This is gonna be part of the show. Actually, we try to get. A bit of uniqueness to every single show, not just with the guests.
I have two production assistants with me,
yes.
and Calder.
How old are they?
And Finn's 1.5, and Calder's 3.5. Yeah, there we go.
Unbelievable.
And we're better.
Unbelievable.
And we're better. Yeah.
So it's going to be that kind of show. It's going to be that kind of show.
Oh.
It's going to be interesting. But as part of so John's on here because he has been a fan of we've been friends, but mainly because he's a huge Typo fan, got me into it, and just because we've been talking about getting him involved. He'll text me every now and then like stuff that I forget. He's like, "Do you remember when you said this on episode 35 or 40?" And you listen like that. I know you've put your kids to sleep to this podcast sometimes, or it helps you pass the time by when you're changing diapers.
So yes, you're correct.
Unbelievable. So
I do not live the lifestyle that you do of the rock and roll DJ.
I do not live that lifestyle.
Or rock and roll podcaster. I sit in a cube.
That's even worse.
For 40 hours a week, I sit in a cube. And in an unnamed building in Washington, D.C. And you're right. You've never asked me to listen to the show. We are friends. We've joked that I've listened to you out of pity. We've joked that I listened to you out of boredom. Truth everywhere. Yeah. But I genuinely enjoy, in the words of Officer Koharski, it's a fine little program.
It's a nice little program.
From Wayne's World, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love it. That means a lot. That really does mean a lot to me. So I'm glad to have you a part of this show. You're calling from D.C. Johnny Kelly will be calling from Texas in just a little bit. But as co-host, that means you're going to be a part of news. Aren't you excited?
Oh, I'm tickled.
Yes. So the first part of our Shotgun News is that we need to, of course, thank Alternative Nation because we're featured on alternativenation.net. Finn is not part of it yet. This is going to be an interesting show, boys and girls.
I took his step stool away, so that's bad on me.
This is going to be great. So with Shotgun News, Alternative Nation, we're featured on there. We're trying to create a podcast network. The AFD show is the first to join. And even before joining, what Brett, the owner of that, has done and has helped me get guests like Johnny is transcribe my interviews and help bring more eyes and ears to the show. So the last episode, I'm still kind of stunned that it happened. I really didn't think it was going to happen, but that was with, of course, Tommy Stinson, episode 59, bassist from The Replacements, of course, from Guns N' Roses during a very unique era of GNR. So it was just really cool to talk to him about what he has going on now with Cowboys in the Campfire. He's back with Bash and Pop, a cool event that he has. So a lot of what's going on with Tommy Stinson now. But we did get to talk to him about some GNR stuff, how he met Axl. He has a great relationship with Duff McKagan. But the article that Alternative Nation picked up, and I'm going to play a clip of it, is when I asked, and I've asked other guests this before. Like, I think I asked this of Todd Kearns, would maybe like Age of Electric open up for GNR or something like that. So I'm like, would Bash and Pop open? Would Cowboys in the Campfire open up for GNR? Because when Not in This Lifetime started, they had a really unique array of opening acts. So, whether it was Skrillex or Baby Metal or Chris Stapleton, so they have that mindset of being unique. So if you didn't get a chance to either listen to the episode or read the article from Alt Nation, this is what Tommy had to say when I asked him if he would ever open up for Guns N' Roses now.
It would be funny, and I'll be honest with you, I actually threw that out there to him a while ago.
Yeah? Okay.
Because I figured, hell, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? We're all still friends. What the hell? But no, I never heard back from that, which is fine. I can totally understand that they're doing their own thing and stuff, and yeah.
Well, you never know. I mean, that's just...
Anything could happen, right?
So you never know, but I find it interesting because he talked about he still has a great relationship with the band, with GNR, and he asked, which is cool, but he didn't hear back. So I guess that's kind of how that camp is. It's just one of the weird just things that surround GNR, like the lack of communication, even with your friends. And Dizzy Reed has joked like he'll be the last one to find out about something when he's in the band. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Stud?
I'm not surprised. This is Guns N' Roses. You ask, even if I can imagine that Axl's parents have to go through 4 layers of people and security, and even if the message gets to him, I mean, that's if his parents are still alive. I don't know.
Yeah,
but,
no. But I know what you mean by an analogy.
You know what I mean? It's just, they're a band where even to the people closest to them, either the ones who have been former members, family members, close acquaintances, everyone gets the same response. I'm not surprised. This whole band is built off. At this point, the myth is the band is the myth. It's a positive. It's mostly a positive. There are some negative points to that, as you know. You've been talking about this for 60 episodes with what's going to happen now. I think it was a smart move on Tommy's part. I think it's a very normal move on Tommy's part. Not surprised in the slightest.
Yeah, I guess I'm not either, but I think it is cool that Tommy, is still friends with everybody, but was willing to do something like that. So, I'm hoping something does happen in the future because I think fans really would appreciate it. And the last part of Shotgun News, because I want to keep this brief, because I want to talk to, we both want to talk to John and Kelly for some time, and we want to ask him your questions that you submitted, and I'm saying not just to you, John, or Stud, so we don't get confused, but the fan submitted questions on Facebook and Twitter. But Jeff Rouse, of course, from Duff McKagan's Loaded, who was on the show not too long ago. And, of course, so was Mike Squires, our theme music, which is just, I still can't get over that he wrote our theme music. But the first video off his new EP is coming out this week as we're recording this. We're recording this, April 22nd off the Gemini. So look out for new music from Jeff Rouse. So, I think I see the phone blinking. So that does it for us. So Shotgun News. News! You ready to talk to Johnny?
Yes, and I promise not to fangirl.
And we'll see how Calder and Finn react. It's gonna be an interesting interview, to say the least.
Hello.
Hi, Johnny.
Hey.
Hey, it's Brandon. How are you doing today?
What's going on?
And just so you know, on the phone with me, I have like a different co-host each episode. His name is John. John Muir. You can say hi, John.
Hello, John.
Hi, Johnny.
How are you?
I think John Muir. I got to call you Stud for this conversation because it's going to get too confused.
That works for me.
And also, Stud has his little kids in the background. So
nice.
If you hear, I don't know, Pet Patrol or something going on.
Johnny, just fair warning, I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and the 1.5-year-old just woke up from a nap. So.
Oh, nice.
I won't drop out, but I will be on mute at some point. So if I come back and say what I missed, I'm not ignoring you.
I know the drill. I have now my girls are 17 and 19.
Right on. See,
oh, God, I just lost my hair thinking about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I figured I'd warn you, just so you know, like, where is this happening? So I'm in Tribeca, I'm in the iHeart Studios, and John is in D.C. with his kids. Making a unique, atmosphere for this interview. So.
All right, cool.
All right. So on the phone with us, as Big John Stud and I have been talking about, and so is Calder. Which one of your kids is that already screaming?
No, that's Finn.
That's
Finn.
So
my wife just actually is going off. She has a couple of meetings this afternoon.
I love it.
And Finn just watched Mommy walk out the door. So
maybe we should.
We should really do that over again.
I don't know.
Let me get you.
That was funny. The minute you started talking.
What do you think? John?
Hey.
Should I restart that, or is it perfect?
We got your bottle. My apologies. He's got his bottle. He's found Nick Jr. I think we're about to recover from this. Okay, let's redo. Yeah, let's redo this.
I love it.
Get it sorted out, and then we'll do it over.
This might be the first for you, Johnny. Having an interview with babies around. I don't know. Maybe it is.
No, I used to do it when mine were babies.
What, you would do interviews with your kids around?
Yes, of course. I had to.
All right. So, you know what? Then I'm going to keep that. I think I'm going to keep that part in. I'm not going to edit this because, it's a podcast. I can make it all nice and smooth. But you know what? I like the essence of live
There's
radio.
nothing shocking about that at all to me.
And it's going to be unique, especially for the listeners. Be like, oh, where am I? Am I on the train, the LIRR, which you're familiar with, of course, being from New York? Where am I?
At least we're not on a plane.
No, we can
Oh,
go
no.
somewhere.
Oh, no.
Jeez, definitely not. So this will be the unedited part 2. So with us, in addition to Finn and Calder, Johnny Kelly, a drummer extraordinaire, from Hookers and Blow with Dizzy Reed, Typo Negative, Danzig, Silver Tomb, A Pale Horse Named Death, Kill Devin Hill, Seventh Void. Am I missing any bands? My goodness.
What do we got? Well, we got Rex Brown, Seven Witches, and a few cover bands in there too.
Yeah, like how do you keep track of this? Like, is this all on your LinkedIn? Like, how do you keep track?
You know
of it?
what? It's oddly enough, it's a whole bunch of bands that don't work enough. That's why I have to play in so many bands.
Okay, that was going to be one of the questions, of course, because I mean this is so much. I mean that's what in the last episode I spoke to Tommy Stinson about. I mean, of course, I mean he can live off stuff from the placements and GNR, but he has a couple bands now, and it's like, why are you still doing 2? And that's only 2, so that's laughable as far as you're concerned.
It seems like a lot on paper, but it really isn't. It really doesn't seem like that much.
I guess. I mean, I can only go by
I'm
what
not
you tell
patting
me.
myself on the back. I find myself with a considerable amount of downtime when you take into when you look at all the bands that I'm associated with. You would think that I'm constantly on the road.
Right.
Not the case. Not the case at all.
All right. Well, we're going to find out all about you, what you're doing when you're not on the road, when you're not in a band, when all your new stuff coming up, what it's like, of course, since, I mean, it's a Guns N' Roses podcast, what it's like working with Dizzy Reed, all that fun stuff. But with every single one of my interviews, it's always about you. It's about the person, because we like to find about the cast of characters, these 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, GNR Bacon.
Did you see Dizzy was doing gigs this weekend with Joe Perry and Brad Whitford?
Yeah, I did. Were you there?
Isn't that insane?
Like, how? Like, that's surprised me so much. Like, Dizzy just popped up playing with, essentially Aerosmith, or, at least 2/5.
Yeah, I heard that Tom Hamilton showed up at one of the shows, too.
Wow. Did you attend to any of them or no?
No, I'm in Texas now, and they were playing. They were from what I saw, it was like 3 gigs in the Northeast. So they were in Atlantic City like last night or the night before.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where it was. Oh, if I knew that, I would have made the trip. I would have.
Had I been home, had I been back east, I definitely would have gone to one. What are you, crazy?
I can only imagine the amount of people you've seen and played with in your life. So the fact that you can still get wowed is still pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, I still have like the things that I grew up on that are like that wowed me, and I'm fortunately enough. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like a lot of those people I haven't had the opportunity to meet. Mm-hmm. So I still have that perception of like, who they are or what they are, like, through their music.
Oh, okay.
There's still like that myth, like, meeting them and finding out that they're like, regular people or that they're assholes.
Right. So Steven Tyler is still the guy on the poster for you, essentially.
Right, exactly.
Okay. That's so cool.
So that was cool. Like, I was sort of texting with Dizzy day before. I was like, how is it?
I mean, so like, what did he say? What was his text? If you can share.
He just said that it's awesome. He's getting to play with those guys from Aerosmith, and I think it started out the story. I believe Alex helped put that together. Like
Rossi.
Those guys, Joe Perry was doing something, whatever, had a couple of gigs, and they were looking for a guy that played Hammond.
Oh, wow!
And Dizzy's name got thrown into it, and then soon you know it, Dizzy's on a plane going to like Boston or something, like wherever they're based out of now. He was at rehearsals with them and stuff, and they he's playing shows with a bunch of guys from Aerosmith.
Unbelievable. And yeah, you mentioned, Alex Grassi. He's been on the show a couple times. And I think now with you, because we've had Todd Kearns on before, other than Dizzy Reed, I think, and we had Chips Enough a couple episodes ago.
Okay.
I think we've had all of Hookers and Blow. I think
there's a lot of them over the years. If you look at that family tree.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
The Menudo of cover bands, maybe?
Pretty much, yeah.
So
Okay, that was cruel. That was absolutely cruel.
Hey, they gave birth to Ricky Martin.
Worse. Worse by my wife.
I can only imagine, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about Dizzy Reed and all that fun stuff coming up. But we want to character build you, and this is just a cool opportunity for both Stud and I to talk to you, big Typo fans. And I had just seen Danzig. Are you still with them? Because I saw them. What was it? Maybe like last fall at the Paramount on Long Island. Were you with them?
Yeah, that was me.
All right, so then I've seen you live because I never got to see Typo, so I've seen you live officially.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What an awesome show!
I've been playing with Glenn, on and off now since 2002. There was like a couple of spurts where I wasn't able to do something because Typo was busy or something like that. There was only been a couple of tours or whatever, and then after he did the Circle of Snakes record, he called me back and asked me if I wanted to, play with him again. And that was in 2000, I want to say 2005.
Okay.
And I think I've missed one tour since 2005.
Awesome. And we're gonna get to. I like to do it kind of like a book because I want to get to when you met Danzig, what was that like, and all that fun stuff.
Okay.
But what ties us three together right now is the Brooklyn background.
Okay.
That's where I was born. I like saying I'm a Brooklyn Jew more than a Long Island Jew. It just makes me feel better.
Well, they're born in Brooklyn and then they moved to Long Island. That's part of the Jewish pilgrimage.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I mean, I moved when I was 1.5, but I still count it. So my family's from East Flatbush, Mill Basin, and Stud. Where was your family from?
So my maternal grandfather was born and raised Bushwick.
Okay.
But the Roman Catholic tradition is very similar to the Jewish tradition. As I don't even remember when, but my grandparents moved when they got married. They moved out to Suffolk County. So
hey,
you were born in Brooklyn, you move east, and that's how it works.
Right. The Italian.
But then my parents left.
Italians go from Brooklyn to Staten Island, and then they reached the promised land of New Jersey.
Oh, good Lord.
Okay. We won't ask about any mob ties. That won't be any questions for me.
Yeah, I went the other way.
Okay. Yeah. No, you went west instead of out east. So is that where you grew up, or did you grow up in? So you grew up in Staten Island, or you grew up in Brooklyn? Where are you from exactly?
I grew up in Brooklyn. I was born in Ridgewood.
Okay.
I was born in Brooklyn Jewish Hospital.
Okay.
That's where I was born. I forget. I'm not sure what they call the hospital now. But yeah, my parents came from Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, around there. My grandmother when we lived in Ridgewood, I believe at the time Ridgewood was considered part of Brooklyn. And then somewhere along the lines it became part of Queens because it's right on the Queens-Brooklyn border.
Okay.
And my grandmother lived in Ridgewood on my father's side. And my mother's parents lived in Flatbush.
Okay.
And then when I was 3, 4 years old, 3.5 years old, somewhere around there, around that age, we moved to Flatbush with them. So it was I grew up right near Brooklyn College.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, right next to Midwood, close to Mill Basin and stuff like that. And
so you know the area.
Oh yeah, I know Mill Basin very well. Yeah. Yeah,
I think my grandparents before they passed, they were the last house on that block. They were in that house for 50 years, before by King's Plaza and all that. We have listeners everywhere. They're like, "What are you talking about?" But
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. After we lived in Flatbush for my family lived there for 20 years, and then my family moved closer to Kings Plaza on Avenue O. East 52nd Street.
I was Avenue U.
Yeah.
I love it. We're talking New York here. See, we got to find
very Brooklyn, yeah. And Typo, like all of us, when I lived in Flatbush, Josh and Peter lived right by Midwood Field, near Monroe High School.
Okay.
In Midwood. Kenny lived off of, when I met Kenny, he was living off of Kings Highway and Nostrand Avenue.
Right on.
So you could walk. We could all walk to each other's homes. We were all walking distance from each other.
See, I like that. I like setting the scene because with each person that we speak to and interview, it's kind of like, where did you come from? And it's, the people who are musicians and look up to you and like your music. It's, everyone comes from, obviously everyone comes from somewhere. That's a stupid statement for me to say. But it's like, what's the path? It's a very tangible and reachable path that can come along.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the neighborhood where we grew up in, from what I understand, because I was friends with, I guess one of the first bands from the neighborhood was Riot.
Okay.
They were from that part, kind of near Kings Plaza, kind of near, if I'm not mistaken, around the Flatlands Avenue, Flatbush area, which was, just a few blocks away from where I grew up. I grew up with Rick Ventura's nephews, who were closer to my age.
Okay.
And then after that, bands like Biohazard, Life of Agony, Typo, we all come from literally the same neighborhood.
I know, and that's what I identify with and I like. So, what kind of kid were you? Did you grow up liking metal? What did you?
Oh yeah, I was pretty much indoctrinated by my father. I was a rock and roll kid. My nursery records were the Beatles and the Stones.
Okay. That's
what my father raised me on. Between my father and my uncle's older than me. I played in a band with my uncle when I was older for a few years.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. It was a trip. My uncle, he's one of the best guitar players I've ever played with, too. And I'm not saying that just because he's my uncle. He really was a great guitar player. He still plays. And he turned me on to, some more other stuff, things like Zeppelin. My father liked Zeppelin a little bit. He had a couple of records in his collection, but not too many. But, my father raised us on, the Stones, the Beatles, Bowie, Rod Stewart, Aerosmith, Leonard Skinner, a lot. I mean, and even other stuff, because my father was only in his 20s. He was 19 when I was born, so a lot of the stuff that he was into, he was young. And so he would come home with these records, and then I would just start listening to them. My father got me into Kiss. And they were like that. That was once I saw once I heard Kiss Alive, that pretty much changed everything. And I was only 7 years old.
I feel like I missed out. I mean, I don't know about you, Stub, but because I grew up with Kiss being already established. Despite it being a GNR podcast, Kiss is brought up quite often. But I grew up with them being established already. There wasn't any lore. They weren't evil by that time. So when you're talking to people of your age or older who found, Kiss Alive, I just feel like I missed out. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was young. I think I was only, I was in the second grade.
Mm.
And then,
to me, Kiss has always been a brand.
As
well as a band. So.
Yeah, well, that, when you're 8, 9 years old, you're not really thinking of it as a brand. You're looking at them as larger than life or like superheroes or something,
right.
They literally had comics. So.
No, you're right. And that's the comparison we do is brand, because Guns N' Roses is a brand, of course, with the past members and current members and reunion and all that fun stuff. And we had to talk about the brand of Typo Negative and all that stuff. So, it all ties in together. So when you were a kid and, you were introduced to all this great music, did you always... were you drumming on pots and pans as a kid, or what was?
Yeah, my brother wanted to be Ace Frehley, and I wanted to be Peter Criss.
Okay, that's cool.
And there was a guy, I want to say guy, I'd imagine at the time he was all of maybe like 16 years old.
Okay. Sure, when you're young, it's like, oh, who's this old
Right,
fella?
yeah. I mean, he got me into cars. He had a car, like, he drove and stuff. So you had to be at the time at least like 16, 17 years old or so. And he had a drum set, and he was like, and he lived down the block from us. Like, he lived on the same street, and he was like, "You want to learn how to play drums?" I was like, "Absolutely! It's my chance to be Peter Criss."
Why drums? Why Peter Criss? Like, why not?
It's just what I couldn't give you a straight answer. I have no idea. That's just what I gravitated towards. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play drums.
All right.
And yeah, that was it. That was the one that I wanted to do. And I took a couple of lessons from him and stuff. And my brother would come with me, and he was picking it up faster than I was. I was getting more frustrated.
I was about to ask that. Yeah.
I took a couple of lessons from him and stuff, and then he would do things. If you wash my car, I'll let you play my drums, like things like that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Or he would take me to go. I was like 11 years old, and he would take me in his car, and he's like, "I'm going to go talk to this girl." He goes, "If you say anything, I'll never let you play my drums ever again." and then he would tell the girl, "Yeah, I'm watching. I'm keeping an eye on Johnny. His sister just died recently, and it's been really messed up at his house. And oh, I feel so bad. Oh, you're such a good person for doing this, and blah blah." He's using me to try to get laid.
Right on. So then, what kind of student were you? Could you pay attention in class? Were you drumming on your notebook? Did you always know you wanted to be a musician?
I got in a lot of trouble for banging on my desk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got in a lot of trouble for that. I got more in trouble from my mouth. I was always a smart-ass kid, trying to have the last word and, trying to be funny and, just being a general, pain in the ass.
I can understand that very well.
But yeah, once I got into high school, it was just by chance that it was a friend of ours, one of the guys that we hung out with, was taking guitar lessons and actually played in a band. I had no idea. I used to hang out with this guy every day. Had no idea that he played in a band. And he just brought it up in a conversation one day. He was like, yeah, I forget if they kicked their drummer out or if he quit or something, And he was like, it's just talking about trying to find another drummer. At the same time, I'm like, you play guitar?
Guys were really good friends then.
Yeah. And I had mentioned that I had played drums a little bit, when I was, younger. I took some lessons, and he was like, "Why don't you come down to the studio?" And I was like, "Well, where's the studio?" And there was a rehearsal studio literally around the corner from my house that I had no idea about.
It's all fate, it seems.
Yeah, and that's the studio where I wound up, where all these people, like Life of Agony and Biohazard and Typo and stuff like that, that's where all these guys, that's where we all met each other.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because, there weren't too many, rehearsal studios for bands to go play at. There was just a few in Brooklyn. So pretty much everyone knew everybody. If you were playing, pretty much everybody was playing in metal bands at the time, or hardcore or whatever. Everyone knew each other. And so then, yeah, I went down to the studio and played with them and stuff. And they were like, "Oh, you're in the band." And I was 15 years old, and I've been playing since.
Wow. So that technically, of course, like you said it was your first band. Do you remember the name?
I didn't even think we had a name.
The band with no name?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I was just excited to be able to go to a studio and literally, literally go into a room and there's a drum set there and I could play it.
Did you feel right then and there? Obviously you fell in love with the drums and with Kiss and that this is going to be my life. That I was like,
yeah. At that point, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
Cool. So then what was the path to, from that band? I guess that's technically your first band, even though whether it had a name or you don't remember it or whatever.
Yeah. My second band.
Yeah.
My second band was like with my brother, like a year later.
Okay. Play with who you know.
A few months later, and shortly. I hadn't even been playing drums for 2 years. I was playing in a band with Evan from Biohazard.
Okay.
We played in a band together. That's how I met him. And
all local shows? Did you travel at all with them?
We didn't even do shows. We were 15 years old. Kids just like literally learning how to play.
True.
And there was like a bar that you could play that was like by Brooklyn College, and basically practically like sneak in to play because we were all underage.
Sure. I mean, you could have played, like the tennis court or during recess. You never know how. You'll see old videos of, people playing band. I think there was one of Green Day playing like lunchtime, at their college.
Yeah, my high school, they didn't have anything like that. They didn't. There wasn't that kind of environment. Whatever. You had long hair, you pretty much didn't fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
It's like, all the kids that had long hair and motorcycle jackets and stuff, like we all hung out in one spot in the school, and everybody else pretty much left you alone and, wrote you off. I had friends that were like, whatever, jocks and, friends with girls and, things like that. But as far as like, like that kind of environment, that was outside of school.
Okay.
And, I remember I was just telling my daughter this story. At one point I wanted to take band in school. And so I go to the music director, who happened to be the dean, so he already knew me. And I walk into his office, and he thought I was in trouble. He's like, "What'd you do now, Kelly?" They all called me Kelly in school. What happened now? I was like, "I want to join band." And he's like, "What?" I was like, "I want to join band. I want to play drums in band." He goes, "Can you read music?" He was like, and I told him, I said, "No." He goes, "Well, then you can't be in band." I was like, "Isn't that what school's for? Aren't you supposed to teach that to me?"
Smart answer.
Yeah. And he's like, "No." He goes, "You have to be able to read to play in band." So that was like the closest I got to like any kind of like formal education with music. It was all pretty much passion driven.
That's awesome though. But that sucks for your teacher failed you. I mean, you maybe he was looking at like one of your smart ass answers, but that's the right answer. Like, at least help me. You want to join school and you want to be in this
right. I want to participate in, like, to be a part of it and to, like, apply myself. And he was like, "Oh no, can you read?" And I was like, "No, that's what you're for. That's what school's for.
At least give you advice."
How to read? I was like, "I want to learn how to read."
Oh my God! I'm assuming now you know how to read music, or no? You're still passionate.
Very little. Like, up to this point, I really haven't. It hasn't been anything that's been required of me. Thankfully. I can read it a little bit, but like, to be able to walk into a session and just pull up a chart and just start reading it and playing it, it's no. No, I couldn't do that.
Well,
if 16-year-old me had heard this part, I would have felt a lot better about trying to pick up any instrument. Because every time I've tried to pick up a guitar, nope. It's like handing, fine china to a gorilla and everything just breaks, and it's very sad. But that's, this is seriously inspiring right now.
I mean, that's the part, it's like, you have to want to do it. And it's like, like the part, 9 out of 10 times, you're not going to just pick up something and automatically, be great at it. It takes work. It takes dedication. You really have to apply yourself. And, and it was just something I just wanted to do it so bad. I was determined to learn how to play. And that's pretty much, it's just what I did. You know, like after school, I try to go to the studio, like, you know, whatever. I mean, the studio costs money. And so it was like, you know, try to get money from my parents to go play in the studio. You know, that was the only time I ever got to play. I couldn't afford a drum set. And if I could afford one, there was no way my mother was going to let me set it up in the house. That was out. You know, so it was like, you know, if I wanted to play, I had to go to the studio.
Yes,
and it was that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to, like, you know, I wanted to do that and go to concerts.
What was your first concert? Do you remember?
Kiss at Madison Square Garden, 1979.
That's a yes.
Yeah.
What a first concert. How old were you?
I was 11. I was on the Dynasty tour.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad got us tickets. And, you know, he took my brother and I, and we had our Kiss makeup on.
Cool.
And we were on the news.
Like YouTube specifically?
Time, that was like the height of, like, you know, the Kiss hysteria. And so the local news was covering the shows at the Garden because they played like a few nights or whatever. And so when we got to Madison Square Garden, there was like a bunch of people. The reporter was interviewing, you know, Kiss fans. And when we got there, they were like, "Get the kids on TV, get the kids," and they just pushed us right into the front of the camera guy. And it's on YouTube.
Really?
I kid you not.
I'm gonna have to look that up and post that.
Look up. Like the tag on it is Kiss newsreel, like 1979. And there's two kids in Kiss makeup, and they're like, you know, it's like a real quick blurb, and two kids with really thick Brooklyn accents. One of them's me, and they show it. I just saw him on there, and I'm like, Kiss is number one.
Kiss T-shirts, Kiss buttons, Kiss hats, Kiss lookalikes, the young fans, some as mixed up as the music.
Kiss is number one.
All right.
I feel embarrassed.
Nah.
Which one was you? Kiss is number one, or I'm embarrassed?
I'm embarrassed. That's my brother.
Oh, okay. Oh, I love it. Perfect. All right, see, look at me. I can multitask too. You said you're getting dressed while doing this?
Look at that.
Amazing. Oh, too good. Awesome.
That's gold right there.
That's gold, Jerry. That's gold.
That's gold, Jerry. Gold!
Unbelievable. So what would you consider your first, like, I mean, these obviously we talked about your first couple bands, but what was your first real band, if I can use that word?
I guess like the first real band was probably with Kenny. I met Kenny when I was still in high school. And we had like thrash metal, speed metal. We called it Hellraiser. We had the band together for a couple of years. We only did a few shows. And through that band, that's how I met Josh from Typo. Okay. That's how Kenny met Josh, too.
Okay.
Josh was the neighborhood guy that had a recording studio in his house. He would do 8-track recordings. So everybody that wanted to do a demo would go to Josh. And that's how we met Josh. That was like in the mid-'80s.
The beginning of Typo, right?
A few years before Typo.
Well, yes, I'm using it loosely, like the beginning, the formation of, like, you know, like for comparison for our podcast, you know, before there was Guns N' Roses, there was Hollywood Rose, it was LA Guns. So those were the beginnings of.
The beginning of Typo, like, you know, of course, starts with Peter, and Peter had Carnivore. And that band, they were like, you know, I guess like the neighborhood, like, you know, rock stars, I guess. Like, you know, like they were like, you know, whatever, the bigger band, and you know, like they were a little bit older and stuff, and they had records out. And Sal and Peter actually started Typo. Because Carnivore had broken up, and Sal had approached Peter about playing, you know, about starting a band together.
Right.
And that's how Typo started. And then Sal brought Kenny into the band because we all used to hang out. You know, like Sal, I know Sal longer than I know anybody than I know Kenny. and Peter brought Josh into Typo because they would he wanted to use keyboards and stuff like that. Want to integrate keyboards into the sound as opposed to what Carnivore was doing. Carnivore was just a three-piece band.
They weren't the Drab Four yet.
No, they were the Thermonuclear Warriors.
What happened to all these great band names that we're discussing now? Everyone now is Death Cab for Cutie or I don't know.
Well, I guess a lot of stuff. It's you run out of all those cool names to take, and you got to come up with something.
I guess, but
you reach and you be I guess some of the bands are what's the most ridiculous thing we could call this band? And then some along the lines, if you play out enough and you get associated with it, it just sticks, and then it doesn't have any significance anymore.
I think that's what the Foo Fighters is. I think Dave Grohl's that's the dumbest name ever, and that wasn't supposed to be
right.
the name.
That's probably what it was. Probably what can be the most removed thing from Nirvana.
Right. Or Chicken Foot. That's another stupid name.
There's a lot of it. Jimmy Eats World. Or I wrestled a bear once. Has to be the most ridiculous name I've ever.
I wrestled a bear once. Sure.
Or we butter the bread with butter. I think that's the name of the band.
Wow, I have not heard that one. I've heard I wrestled a bear once, but I have not heard that.
Yeah,
sure.
We butter the bread with butter. That's the name of a band. That's a real band.
I can't imagine why they're not famous.
Neither can I. I've been scratching my head.
But Carnivore, Typo Negative, those are just awesome names. So what was the transition from, because I know you weren't there for the formation of Typo, unless you were kind of around as a friend that you can tell.
I was around as a friend, yeah.
So did you see the formation of Typo and how they became big? Or maybe you can take us back to the first time you met the late and great Peter Steele.
I used to run across Peter in the rehearsal studios. He would be there with Carnivore, and I would be, rehearsing, with whatever band I was playing with and stuff. And then I wound up working, when I finished high school, I wound up working at that studio where we all knew each other. So I knew everyone that was coming in and out of the building. I was there all the time.
That really was fate for that being around the corner, that studio.
I mean, literally around the corner. It was right next to the bicycle shop. So, I was always on a bicycle when I was a kid, and I'd always go there for stuff, always going into the bike shop. And literally the door right next to it, you went upstairs, and there was a rehearsal studio. I had no idea.
Is it still there?
Actually, it just it closed 2 years ago.
Okay. Jeez.
It finally closed down.
Damn it! Mm-hmm. All these things are closing. I was just at BB King's, and that's closing.
I just saw that. I was in Manhattan last week, and then when I came home, I saw the announcement that they're closing it down. That's terrible.
That is. I being from here, I fondly went. I went to go see Buckethead. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe I've never been here. What a great venue. And then I just get the email blast from them. The final, 10 shows.
It really is a good venue, too. It's a really good sounding room, which is unfortunate. Which makes it unfortunate that it's closing.
Sure. But
42nd Street, man, that real estate, it's you have to have Disney money to, to set up a shop there.
Nice. Well played. But this goes back to meeting Peter for the first time, and we can contrast this to I'm 5'6" and Stud. How you're 6'4"? How tall are you?
About 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah. So how tall are you?
In awful shape, by the way. If we're gonna compare ourselves to Peter, I am in terrible shape. I mean, my waist is disgusting. But anyway.
Oh, he's not that bad. Jeez. But it's, I'm like a little kid. It's I'm like the ventriloquist dummy next to Stud. So how tall are you versus how tall Peter was?
I'm 6'2".
Oh, so you're tall.
Peter was 6'6".
Okay, so that was no big deal.
He had a few inches on me for sure, yeah. Did
he have, I guess because that was going to be my segue, because it's not too bad. What kind of presence did he have? Because he was, not just with his voice, we're talking about cartoon characters and superheroes with Kiss. He was kind of like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely, he had a commanding presence. And I always said this about him because, for me and for, Kenny, we could go anywhere and I guess, assimilate, whatever, after a show, we could go hang out at the bar and, just hang out. Peter would step out of the dressing room or off the bus. There was immediately a crowd around him. And that was that he would tell me the craziest stories of just him going to the store off the block from his house. And he was he was this thing trapped, that a normal person was trapped in it inside of him. And he just wanted to be a normal person, and he couldn't. Anywhere he went, it was always, he always became, he always commanded your attention. He always had this presence, and he really did. He just wanted to hang out.
You think that affected him? That because just to fit in?
I think, I know, as a kid, he said that he was a heavy set kid, and he got teased a lot. And, with that came, the self-deprecating humor and and I guess the outlandish character. He really was a class clown. And him and Josh literally grew up together as children, playing with army men in front of their house and first girlfriends and all that stuff. They literally grew up together. And, they would tell me all the crazy things that they did as kids. And this, they weren't normal kids.
Those are the best kind of kids, though, I think, because I don't feel
I don't know. I think there was something in the water supply onto their street. Maybe power lines were too close to the sidewalks or something. I don't know.
The secret of the ooze somehow got in there.
Yeah, but they were not normal. In terms of normal, well-adjusted.
Hey, I identify with that as well. I'll believe it.
Yeah, so there, I guess music was a proper route, for Peter, and it was, he was able to, be whatever he wanted to be, to pretend to be anything. And then ultimately, a lot of it was he became himself, and but yeah, I mean, as far as bands visually and stuff, he could do whatever he wanted, and he wasn't, it was okay to be the freak in the room.
It's funny because it's not even so much the freak in the room, because Stud could attest to every single girl that I've ever met that was a Type O Negative fan was always ridiculously hot and obsessed with the band. So it's
we were fortunate in that way. It didn't suck.
Calder agrees.
Finn.
Oh, Finn.
I'm glad you're happy now.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to back Brandon up. There was always something you like this band? You look like you do, and you like this band, and you're going to talk to us and have them as the topic. This is.
I mean, it was cool in a way because, throughout the years, you would encounter people from all walks of life. Successful, doctors and, lawyers and stuff like that, right down to street hoods. And it would be your class stopped. It didn't matter because then you had that common denominator of they like the band. So they, I was always impressed by that.
Isn't your most random famous fan? I'm blanking on his name. The traffic reporter for Channel 11, WPIX Channel 11. Because there were times...
John Del Giorno from ABC.
Yes, exactly.
John's one of my best friends.
I'd be listening. It's I'm in my dorm room. I'm not driving anywhere, but okay, this channel is still on. Why did he just name drop? Why were we talking about October Rust today? flying over the BQE. I don't get this. And then only to find out, like, did he play? Did he? I don't know if like jam with you guys, but like it was more than like he was not only a fan, but he did have some musical background, and then was just so big of a fan of you guys, he just ended up.
No, John doesn't play. No, he doesn't play. He was just a fan, and then I met him. I actually met him. I met him and his wife at like a Seven Dust show. And he just came up, introduced himself to me. We hit it off very well, and then our families have gone on vacations together and stuff like that throughout the years. When I was in New York last week, I went to his house, like where I lived in Jersey. Was like 10 minutes from his house. So we'd always hang out. And he became really good friends with Kenny. He was good friends with all of us. He was good friends with Peter. And then sometimes, like, if we had like we would do like fly out dates, like we went and played at NAMM one year, like, he came and hung out with us for a few days, and, like he and his wife would come out, whatever, if we were playing in Vegas, because he likes going to Vegas, they would come and hang out with us at Vegas and stuff, and then he'd wind up helping us out in some kind of capacity. He wound up getting put to work, poor guy.
That's because Typo Negative was and still is one of the coolest bands. And I mentioned before, Stud really got me into them, because I was at that time, I think it was I made too much pop punk, I think, at the time. Jimmy Eat World, too much of that stuff, and he needed to make me a little bit more evil.
Yeah, you needed a correction.
I did, and I appreciate that. But John and I were Stud and I, so I don't get it confused. So we're talking off air, and this can lead to one of Stud, your first questions for Johnny was the Beatles influence, and you had that growing up, and when you eventually took over for Sal in Typo. And I was kind of thinking it's kind of like how, Elton John is for Axl, a little bit. Because you may not hear it in every song. Of course, the piano-based songs, we're going to hear the Elton John influence. But the Beatles influence on, a band like Typo, how does that happen? How do you put that into the music?
For us, between the four of us, we're all into musically, we're into, different things. Everybody has their bands that they're really into or whatever. And it differed between the four of us, but the common denominators between the four of us was our love for the Beatles and Black Sabbath. And that was always something, like whenever we were listening to music on the bus or whatever, there was always, if we put those on, we can all agree on it. But it was trying to, those influences were the most prominent ones in our music. And we were totally fine with wearing it on our sleeves. We were like, this is the end result of, being influenced by this. And we had no problems with owning up to it. And it was, we were trying to, in a way, I guess, we were celebrating, just the stuff that we loved growing up. And, it gets twisted around and it becomes, our own thing. But those were the dominant influences when we were making music. Even like drum parts and approaching, trying to take the approach to something like a Penny Lane or Strawberry Fields Forever, and trying to apply that in the context of Typo Negative's music. It became it would almost become like a joke, and some of the stuff that when it would get. When a song was finished, I'd be like, man, I can't believe we didn't get sued for that.
That's funny.
But it was it was something. It was for instance, we would work on songs, and it wasn't just the Beatles and Black Sabbath. There were a lot of influences.
Sure.
From all of us, and it would just become like this soup. And, when we were working on songs, writing new material, and before, the songs would be, I guess, whatever, before they had actual titles or, things like that, we would refer to things as, do the Motorhead song. Let's run through that. because it had like, whatever, it had a Motorhead vibe to it. So then it became that until, the lyrics were all fleshed out and it had, more of a direction of our own. But like, we would refer to things, like that. But, it wasn't like a conscious effort where they're like, all right, we have to write a Beatle type song now. Like, the record needs, another Black Sabbath type riff or something. It's just really, this is what came up, and it was just like, then it would become like, to us, like, like it would, something would like, click on in the song and it'd be like, this is pretty obvious of, where it's coming from.
I mean, you guys did a couple of, you've recorded a few Beatles covers, and you've opened, when I got to see you guys in New Haven, 2001. Right. Stunned I even remember that year. You guys opened it back in the USSR, and it fit. It fit really well. Even through the vibe that you guys put out, but it fit very well. And then like looking at the more Carnivore, inspired and based, and just that sound from the first two albums, and going into October Rust, and then there was a shift with World Coming Down and Dead Again, that there was I can point to, okay, this chord, this drum section, it was the scope of the songs, the structure of the songs had a very much more melodic, like, mid to later Beatles feel to it.
Well, that was like I think that was like, as the records, as the band went on, it was, the band found more of its own identity than being the remnants of what Carnivore was, Like the first record is pretty much a lot of it is leftover stuff that Peter had written for Carnivore that he wasn't using for Carnivore. And then the band broke up, so that there's that connection between, like past and present up to that point. And then it started growing a little, and then it took a drastic change with Bloody Kisses. But it doesn't feel that, like, to me, it doesn't feel that far removed from the first record, because there's still stuff on it, like We Hate Everyone and Kill All the White People and stuff, and then but a lot of the songs have more melody in them, and then it like, I guess like the apex of it was like, with October Rust, which is probably the most melodic record out of all of them.
Would you say that is the first stamp of approval, typo, negative record?
I would think Bloody Kisses was. I'd have to say Bloody Kisses was. That was the one that really that was like a really big step to go from Slow, Deep, and Hard, musically. That was a really big step, I thought. Like, I remember, hearing the demos and stuff, and I was like, it's like, wow, this is pretty drastic. What are they trying to do? I was like, where are they trying to go with this? And, then I wound up being in the band, but as a fan, at first it was like, it was that was a pretty big change, musically. But you could still feel there was definitely the DNA is in there. And then, by the end of, by the time Bloody October Rust came around, it's pretty much the band has its identity now. It's, there's, the culmination leading up to that is it's very, very apparent, and it very much stands on its own as far as what kind of band Typo is. To me at least,
For sure.
And then the other things Typo had found its real strong identity, found its sound, and ultimately what was important to us was not so much what we were doing, but whatever we did sounded like Typo Negative. Not Typo Negative trying to sound like somebody else. Not Typo Negative trying to sound like The Cure or Celtic Frost or, Duran Duran
Okay.
or Black Sabbath. But, I mean, a lot of that stuff, all that stuff is a big influence on us.
I wouldn't think, I definitely wouldn't have thought Duran, but no, you're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
It was like, we're a sum of, it's a sum, you pretty much become a sum of your experiences. And this was a lot of the stuff that, that was influencing, Peter's songwriting. Peter loved a lot of that, 80s pop stuff. We took a lot of that. We took a lot of those things and put it in a different application. And that's, I'm not going to say that's that's the secret sauce to the Big Mac, but it was part of it, it was this, all those things, played a part in some capacity. Some, some played a bigger part than others, but. And I think, at the end of the day, a lot of that can go back to the Beatles.
I don't know. Right now I'm imagining Peter at a Duran Duran show singing Rio at the top of his lungs.
It would be a sight. But don't think for a minute, Peter absolutely loved Duran Duran.
All right. Point taken. Absolutely. If you can answer, because, I've spoken to different, people on this podcast when they've dealt with loss. I've talked about loss that I've had.
Right.
Do you remember? Can you talk about where you were when it was announced Peter had passed?
I was. I had the night before Peter died. Kenny and I went to go check out a rehearsal studio in Staten Island because we were getting ready to start the writing sessions for the next record. We were getting ready to start working on the next record. We needed a place to rehearse. And Peter was living out in Pennsylvania, and he was preparing to move to Staten Island, right where Kenny and I lived. He was going to live literally right between us. So you had the 3 out of 4 of us right there in Staten Island. So we were looking for a place. We found this studio in Staten Island where we could do monthly rehearsals, where we'd be, our own room where we'd lock up and we can go there whenever we wanted, that kind of scenario. And I tried calling Peter while we were at the studio to tell him that we found a place. And this was in April. This is the day before he died. Peter was taking his place May 1st. He was moving back to New York on May 1st. And so we were arranging to take the studio on starting May 1st as well. And so anyway, I was trying to call him to tell him that we think we found a place that that might work out, that kind of stuff. And I didn't get him on the phone. And then I left a message for him to call me, and then I tried calling him again the next day. And his girlfriend answered the phone, saying that Peter was sick in bed. And I was like, all right, fine. I was like, tell Peter that we found a studio in Staten Island right by where we live, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We get it May 1st. Tell him I hope he's feeling better. Call me when he's up to it. And then I had rehearsal with Kenny and Seventh Void that night in Brooklyn. And I had gotten a phone call from a Long Island number, and I didn't know who it was, so I let it go to voicemail. That was in the in the evening. And then when I got in my car to go to Brooklyn to go to rehearsal, I was like, let me, that person left a voicemail, so I was like, let me check it. Anyway, it was Peter's sister, and she was like, call me at this number when you can, thanks. So I called her up, and she was, I was like, hey, what's up? It's Johnny, return your call. What's going on? And she was like, Peter's gone. And I was like, what do you mean by gone? Because with Peter, you never really knew what to expect. I was like, gone as in, he disappeared, that kind of thing. Did he go, whatever. Did he have a relapse, go on a binge, and now he's in trouble, or, whatever. Last thing I was thinking of was that he passed away.
Right.
And I was like, what do you mean by gone? And she's like, he's gone. He died. I was like, what are you talking about? He died. And she was like, he died. He died like whatever it was, like whatever, like, a couple of hours prior. And I like whatever. I was like it's basically like a state of like, disbelief and, shock. And I was like, all right. I was like, what do you need from me? What do you need me to do? Whatever. And, I'll whatever, make some phone calls. I'll tell people, whatever you need me to do. And so then, I ran back upstairs to tell my wife Peter died, and I was like, I got to go to Brooklyn. I got to go see Kenny. And I jumped in my car, and I went to go see Kenny. And I was trying to call him while I was like calling people while I was driving. And then Kenny called me. It was like, Peter died. I was like, yeah, I know. And then he started yelling at me because why didn't I call him?
Oh.
It was like, one of those things.
Sure, I've been there.
I was like, I said, I'm going to see you in a few minutes. I was just going to tell you when I was at the studio. I was like, I'm calling other people, And then that was like, that was it. I called Josh. I told Josh what was going on. And then it was, then it just became that whole, everything just stopped. And, it was really hard to find out what was going on because he was in Pennsylvania. That I remember, his sisters really didn't have a lot of info on, how he died and, things like that. They were just like, he's dead. And then, his sisters called me from his apartment, asking me about some stuff, about belongings and things like that, And, at that point, I was pretty much with people dying, I was kind of punch drunk at this point because I had in that particular time, I had been to 10 funerals in a year and a half.
Wow.
My father died a year before. My grandfather died a year and a half before. And then, other, uncles and friends of mine, the friends died. Other friends died. We were literally at another funeral, all of us, at another funeral 2 weeks later because one of our other friends passed away.
That's a lot.
So a lot of it was just all right, what do we got to do? We got to, when I'm in a situation like that, I try to, take care of business. Try to, tie up all the loose ends and all that stuff. That's pretty much how I process this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And, it was keeping in contact with his family and stuff and, finding out what's going on, stuff with I guess things like his, his funeral and stuff. We're having problems getting Peter into Brooklyn because because he died in Pennsylvania. And then there was issues with that, just getting his body transported.
Right.
So there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on until, he was finally buried. But it was it really was. It was you were just caught in you were just caught in a shitstorm.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the story with us because I I'm not sure. I don't want you to relive it, but obviously as fans.
Oh no, it's fine. It's just hard. You got to try to find the balance of just telling the story, stating facts and whatever. Trying to keep the emotional element out of it. Just telling the story. Here's what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I understand.
And I can't believe it now. I turn around and here it is, 2018. And it's I can't believe that it's it's been a long time now.
It has been a while.
It's incredible.
And then the fact that you still have the fan base that you do, and I think you tweeted out the other day, all the messages you still get about him. He's certainly not forgotten. Not just by us because we're talking to you now, but by still millions of fans. People still love your music. His music. All of your music.
It's true. I like when you're it's. It's one thing, when you see, whatever, I guess, other bands or other artists and stuff like that, and you see how, whatever their legacy, carries on, like a Prince, for instance, or something like that. And then, in our situation, I never really take a step and look at it because it's one thing to witness it or to be a fan of something, and then it's when you're in it, you don't look at it, you don't really ever look back, you don't look back and say, wow, look at what we did. You tell war stories about about stuff, but you don't really, sit back and take inventory on what you've accomplished and, and what it means to somebody else.
Right.
You're just looking at it, in your own, you're in the middle of it looking out instead of being out looking in.
This is we talk about a lot of bands. We've talked about a lot of bands in the show, other than, of course, Guns N' Roses, and GNR hasn't had that specific loss. We could talk West Arkeen, but I'm talking, actual members. Yeah. When Chris Cornell had passed, when Chester Bennington had passed, it's my thought of, and I had this good conversation when we interviewed Christopher Thorne from Blind Melon, and they weren't. I was asking, when they found their new lead singer, were they looking for a band? Were they looking to reform the band? What was the process?
Right.
And it just kind of just happened naturally. And he says now he just tours his Blind Melon because he loves the music, and these are songs he didn't get a chance to play because Shannon had passed, and he's actually losing money because he would made more money as a producer. And a lot of people have different reasons for different things. And now the current one is with Stone Temple Pilots. And for me, I certainly can, I understand, because I've talked about my my addictions. I'm 2.5 years without a drink.
Good deal.
Thank you, but I'm not looking for a thank you. But I'm just saying it as far as, you're nice enough to open up about it, so that's how I feel as a host, for lack of a better word. I feel like it adds more. I'm not just asking you questions. I'm sharing. We're having a conversation. So, with STP, and when Christopher Thorne talked about STP, is whatever those guys want to do, whatever their healing process is, that's on them. But when it was first announced, and I've heard other fans say that it just feels like it was too soon, but it's again, I when I lost my dad. It's I can understand, the sudden loss of a suicide. I understand that, and how everyone handles it differently. Mm-hmm. So how did you handle it? Did it ever occur to you guys and the other band members in Typo Negative because again, how do you replace Peter? How do you replace Scott Weiland? How do you replace Lane Staley?
Yeah, of course. Actually, for us, it was just it was literally a 2-sentence conversation. We were that's it. That's it. There's there's no recovering from this. This is and you can't take that element out of Typo Negative and call it Typo Negative. You can't. There was a no-brainer to move on.
Right.
There was never any maybe we could do this, maybe, there was never any of that. There have been discussions about we've been approached about doing some kind of tribute or something like that. Mm-hmm. And but even that has been where do you start? Who can come in and
do something, like with Typo and make it cool and make it credible and make it make it something, interesting. And, it's like Peter he was too much of a character. It's not like me dying. Like you could bring in another drummer and stuff like that. Like Typo Negative. Peter was such a character more than just a singer and bass player. And that was very much, like Peter the person was a much bigger piece of Typo Negative than just the mechanics of it. You know what I mean?
Sure, and that's those thoughts have happened when people talk about about Pantera. Quote, reuniting. Who would you do with Zach Wilde's name is thrown around.
I know, and it's like and I'm like, like you can't. I would never, ever consider doing a reunion. You can't do a reunion.
Okay.
A reunion requires all the members to be there. Particularly alive.
Right. All right. So yeah, no, I completely understand, and that's why I use the analogy with it. Mm-hmm.
And when someone passes away, that's a big part of like you can't reunite with someone that isn't here anymore.
And so no, I'm appreciating you adding humor into it. So we shouldn't expect a Peter Steele hologram.
No.
I mean, people were they tried it with Dio and they stopped it. It was kind of weird.
I mean, it's unfortunate too because for me, I miss Typo. I miss the music. I miss playing the music. I miss the guys. I miss making music with the guys and stuff. I miss that part of my life. I miss that part being in my life. It's like it doesn't matter who you can get. You could try to bring somebody in to try to fill that gap. Even if they are whatever, I guess technically capable, it still wouldn't be the same.
Brandon had just mentioned what Alice in Chains is going through, and there was a stretch where they were. Granted, they have a different situation where they have Jerry Cantrell who can step in for Lane Staley. But they brought in James Hetfield for a song. Phil Anselmo, going back to Pantera.
Something like that.
I know that. Yeah, but that was a one-off, and that was I don't want to use contrived, but it was a specific circumstance, and it was a friend that they knew that was not going to be the same, but at least would put, okay, this is a friend of the band who everyone knows and everyone is comfortable with that will do an honest effort on the track.
Right, and something like that was more of that's to me that with something like that, that's a celebration of Lane. That's not somebody coming in and trying to be Lane. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, it does.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And at the time, that was a one-time thing. Which something like that, I would be open to. If it was done right and it was the right setting and it was the right people and it was for the right reasons, I would totally be into celebrating Typo's music. Celebrating Peter. Something doing something like that and taking that on the road. I don't know. I don't think that would be that doesn't seem like a good idea.
So no Marky Ramone's Blitzkrieg, but the Typo Negative version?
I'm sorry?
Marky Ramone has his Blitzkrieg, and he goes out and he's playing drums. He has whatever musicians he has.
Right.
And it's a tour, and I saw him do it, and he had Andrew WK on vocals. And again, it's that same, he's not Joey. He'll never be Joey, but there's something about putting Andrew WK in that role that made sense in the moment. And it was I think that tour went on for a year. So that was
really?
That was a designed, I don't want to say it was designed to be monetized, but then again, what you were saying about you're in 17 different bands right now, you kind of need to have some sort of revenue going, which everyone on this show understands completely. But that was by design to take Ramone's music on the road with someone who spiritually fit.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, like, you know, like some people, like, you know, some bands have been able to do it, and it has that it has that integrity to it. There's a certain amount of credibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I just like, you know, like with our music, it's like I just couldn't imagine who could come in and like, you know, it could, like, you know, like it's like one thing to, like, you know, like it would be wrong. Like, I wouldn't want to do it to, like, you know, recapture the past, because I mean, you can't.
But like a celebration of, and again, like, you know, like with what Christopher Thorne said, he missed playing that music, you know, and you miss playing that music. So, you know, while Blind Melon is touring and doing something different, you know, it can just be a nice moment, you know, for not just the musicians involved, but for the fans. So I think that's a positive. You know, that's a good thing that you're saying, that, like, at least that hope is out there. I mean, it's nothing materialized, but the fact that music still means so much to you after all these years, as it means so much to me and to Stud and all the other fans out there.
Yeah, you know, like I've you know, never made any, like, you know, like never tried to hide the fact. Typo was like one of my favorite bands. So it was like, you know, when I joined the band, I was like, I just joined one of my favorite bands. I was like, this is great. So, you know, like everything else after that was like, you know, was cake. It was the icing on the cake.
I got you.
It was like when I heard the band, I was upset because I wasn't in it when I first heard it.
That's funny.
You know, I was mad at Kenny because he was in such a good band.
I got you.
So then when I got the opportunity to join the band, you know, I was like, it's like, you know, like I nobody was happier than me. And to have been in the band, like, you know, for as many years after that, you know, it was a gift. And, you know, it had its ups and downs just like anything else. But at the same time, like, you know, it was, you know, I always loved being in the band. I loved what we were doing. I was always, you know, I was proud of what we were doing. And, you know, when it was over, like, you know, it was like I lost a really good friend, but also, like, you know, like something that was like, you know, like the band, like, you know, the music and stuff. I was like, that's it. It's never going to be there again. You know, that part of my life is gone.
Well, I'm glad you've continued still your life as a drummer, and we mentioned the 1,200 bands that you're in currently and since. But this is an interesting time to now make a transition to GNR and all the, you know, like what Axl did and maybe what Steven Adler did and is doing now with going on the road just playing GNR music. Of course, there hasn't been any losses in that Appetite 5, and a full reunion could still happen. But before we get to that, maybe your thoughts on it. When did you first meet Dizzy Reed? Because you've been playing with Hookers and Blow. That's been one of your things you've done in your post-Typo life.
Yeah, actually, right now, I've been playing with Hookers and Blow, like 4 years now?
Right.
I started playing with them on their 10th anniversary. But I had met Dizzy. I met Dizzy like when Typo was touring in 2003. That's when I met him.
So how did you meet him? Did GNR ever tour with Typo? Did they ever do anything together?
No.
Okay.
There was never anything. We met Slash and Matt Sorum once at a rehearsal studio in L.A. We were on tour with Nine Inch Nails, and we had a day off in L.A. and we were getting ready to. We were going to go on tour again after we were done with Nine Inch Nails, so we were working on adding other songs to our set. So we wanted the day of rehearsal, and they just Slash and Sorum were at the studio, and I think
Mind you, this is 1994. So I'm trying to remember. This is a long time ago.
I got you. I was 11, not to make you feel bad.
Yeah.
I was 12.
They were in a studio across the parking lot. We were rehearsing, like Slash came over to the truck and like grabbed a bunch of shirts and split. And Matt saw him. I remember we were playing the song Pain. We were working on putting Pain into the set. And I remember just like Matt walked into the room and he's just like watching us play. And then there's the part where Kenny and Peter lift up their guitars and they scream into the pickups. And then it comes through the amps and stuff. And I remember when we were playing that, and then Josh with the jackhammer samples and all that stuff, he was just sitting there with his jaw open. Like he had no idea what he was witnessing. And that was it.
That was it?
That was our meeting with Guns N' Roses.
Nice. So then when did you meet Dizzy and then join his band?
I met Dizzy through Happening Harry.
Happening Harry?
Yeah, which was a guy, Harry's out in L.A., and he would have, like, he was a promoter at this club, and he would have, like, these jam nights, and he'd have all these people from different bands, come up and play a few songs together. And I met Dizzy through Harry. They came to one of our shows, and they were trying to, Harry, they were trying to get us, and they were, saying, I got Dizzy Reed with me, we want to come back and meet the band. And our tour manager knew Dizzy. He goes, I know Dizzy. And so he went and checked it out, and it was, it was legitimate. And so I met them afterwards we went to a bar where they were playing after our show in Hollywood. Got up and jammed a couple of songs, whatever. And then Harry would put these trips together to go to, the Chicago area. Go out there for a week and play different bars and stuff, all covers and, get people from different bands like me, Jeff Duncan from Armored Saint, or Mike Duda from Wasp and Dizzy. And we would do that every couple of months. We were going out. This was in 2004. We would go to Chicago for a week together and just play. And we would play the Stones and Bowie and, Black Sabbath or, whatever. We were playing all these different songs, Deep Purple. And then we did that for a little while. And then I hadn't seen Dizzy for a while. And then Guns N' Roses got back together, with the lineup with Stinson and Frank and, Robin and those guys. And they ran into him a couple of times during that. And then Hookers and Blow had some shows lined up in the Northeast. And Duda had called me asking me if I wanted to do it. And of course I said yes. And then that was it. Been in the band since.
Yeah, so there was no pitch to you. It wasn't, because what other bands were you in at the time? Were you all about wanting to make original music, or was it a chance to play with Dizzy and just play?
Hookers and Blow is what it is. That it's we're just going to go out there. We're playing covers. We're going to have a lot of fun. And I knew what Hookers and Blow was about. And it's the greatest name for a band ever. So of course I had to be in it just to be connected to that name.
Okay.
I'll explain it to my kids at some other point.
Yes, no, for sure. And I'm sure Stud that Calder and Finn do not listen to any Hookers and Blow lullaby music, because I know.
No. I will say that we do have, each kid follows a different parent down their musical tracks. So I have Finn. I do know that he likes Mastodon, Ozzy, and what was I listening to the other day? Band called West by God from West by God, Virginia.
Okay.
They don't exist I don't think they exist anymore. Actually, they don't. It's my friend's brother's band. But he's sitting in the back in his car seat. You can see him. He'll occasionally flap his arms during during the new Mastodon album. He's clapping, and I'll text my wife and go, "I got him," because the older one is on a Taylor Swift kick.
My younger one, like Taylor Swift and stuff like that.
You have two daughters,
more
John.
pop oriented.
And you said they're what, 19 and 17?
Yeah.
Okay, 3.5 and 1.5. I've got my hooks in on the 1.5-year-old. My wife's
when my girls were younger, they actually liked a lot of the stuff. Like I got my younger one. I bought her Chinese Democracy as a Christmas gift when it came out.
Really?
She wanted it. Yeah.
Well done.
That is well done. Out of all the GNR, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Chinese Democracy, but of all the GNR records to buy her and for her to ask for, I think that's pretty amazing. Did you go to any of those shows? Because you were friendly with Dizzy when you mentioned rejoining.
I went to the first time I saw them play was when they did a few nights at the Hammerstein Ballroom.
Yeah.
I went to one of those shows. And then Danzig played at Rock on the Range when Guns N' Roses played.
Okay.
And I ran into Dizzy then, and I saw the show then, too.
So what did you think? Because, I mean, obviously we've established the difference, somebody you lost somebody versus a band just breaking up and whatever the bad blood is. What is your perception of that? Do you think of it? And that's how I kind of look at life now, where, I've suffered great loss. It could be fixed. You can't get that back. You can't get Peter back. You can't get something, a person back. But if they're still around, did you just enjoy it as a show, or were you thinking, I kind of wish this was what it used to be, or did you have any of that thought process?
Really, like my gut feeling with all of it was I was happy for Dizzy that Dizzy was playing with the band again. That they were playing, because there was there were a lot of years where it was they didn't know what was going on, or a lot of that stuff, So I was glad to see that Dizzy hanging in there and staying in the band and stuff, and doing being a part of it, and then the record finally coming out. I was happy that the record finally came out for him, as well as for everybody. It was a cool record. There's nothing wrong with that record.
No,
but it's a good record.
I think so too.
I think the expectation, the standard that it's held up against, where it's held up to, is kind of what kind of hurts it. And with all the stories that come along that are also a part of it, with with how long it took for the record to come out, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as a record, it's a really good record.
Sure, and that's great. I hear that a lot from other fellow musicians who are there for their friend, and that's just you look at it through those goggles. I'm happy for my friend, so that's really cool.
I mean, I was happy. I was happy for Dizzy because finally after all the years of working on that record and a lot of the ups and downs that came with that whole thing. I was happy to see that it worked out for him.
Sure.
And then when I saw the band sounded great. It's they're the songs they're playing, they're great iconic songs. And
absolutely.
They did a great job with it.
So this can also lead to, and Stud, maybe you can read them, since Stud is, yes, he's my friend, but he's also a fan of the show, and sometimes I'll bring on fans to co-host, and they'll read Stud, who's on the line with us.
Oh,
the other John.
I didn't hear it clearly. I wasn't sure. That's why I wanted to double check.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know it's weird calling a friend Stud, but he's just I don't. We'll talk about how he got into his nickname another time, I guess.
It's actually fairly clean. Of all our friends and their nicknames, mine is on the cleaner side, which is nice.
Well, Big John Stud, right?
Yeah, the wrestler. I had long hair, shaved infrequently, wore flannel, and was just generally large. And the kid who lived door next to me, I was coming back from class one day, he just goes, "Hi, Big John Stud." and like 3 people just had that jaw-dropping, holy shit.
Usually you wind up with a nickname through some like traumatic event or something like making fun of you in some way.
Oh yeah, this was one of the least traumatic situations.
Yeah, but it wasn't because you're a ladies' man.
No, that's my wife.
Well, this is the transition. What we're talking about now, how you're happy for Dizzy, and finally the record came out. So, having a fan on Instud read fan questions. That's just how I kind of produce the show. It may make sense.
Down, for the love of God, get away from that. He's okay.
I love it. We start the interview, John, where a kid's screaming, and now I'm giving Stud another platform, and his kids start acting up again. You can't.
But he's smiling this time.
This is organic. This is organic.
Yes, it's very organic. All right.
You can't fake this. But this is the transition, to Ken's question about about Dizzy. So go ahead, Stud.
Ken Bigora from Long Island. Has Dizzy played or discussed any recordings of unreleased GNR songs to the band?
And would that happen during the Chinese days? Would he talk to you about the record before it came out?
No. Everything was it was, for the most part, a lot of stuff with GNR. It's all like small talk and things like that. Nothing. Nothing TMZ worthy, or I never heard anything. Dizzy never had any tracks with them, not even reference tracks or anything like that.
Okay.
Really, what we're doing when we're hanging out is we're talking about the Stones.
I got you.
Yeah.
That seems to be pretty consistent. When I've spoken to the other members of Hookers and Blow, and how it was just. It was just kind of, if you would even talk about GNR, I think Don Jameson would even say that, about the recent tour. He's like, we don't really even talk about guns. It's just...
We talk more about Rat.
That's funny. To be a fly on that wall.
Yeah. We have no friends. that van is that van or the bus or whatever. That's our safe space.
Oh yeah, the Partridge Family bus that you guys are on with the cocaine on the side.
Yeah.
Oh, too good. So then I don't know the next question, Stud. You want to read from Garrett? I don't know if you could, if that would be on the same par as the Dizzy talk. So go ahead.
Garrett Smith from Texas adds, did Dizzy and Todd ever share interesting or funny Slash stories around him?
Or did you? Do you have any? Because I know you met Slash that brief instance when he came into the studio. But
yeah, I didn't even say a word to him. He doesn't. He never really. There really isn't too many stories like that. It's always whatever, a war story or something about a crazy situation, say that they were all in, or not so much there was anything that was ever singled out or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Eric has a good question.
Johnny, I'm assuming your birthday is March 9th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Eric Michael Haber of Buffalo. Johnny and I have the same birthday, March 9th. With his upcoming project Silvertomb, will they play any typo songs with vocals or at least instrumental versions? Any chance, this is a multi-part, any chance of Josh getting involved? Eric says he's met you a bunch of times since 95. Always a nice dude. Looking forward to see Silvertomb open for Life of Agony in September.
Oh, that's right.
I guess the first is, will there be any typo in the upcoming Silver?
You know what? There's a chance of it. Kenny and I did it with. We did it in Seventh Void. We played a little piece of when we were touring in Europe, opening up for Monster Magnet. We played a little piece of World Coming Down. But yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. If something fits in the set, that's that fits along the lines of what the band's doing and stuff, then yeah, I'm into it. Josh will not be a part of it. Josh does not play music anymore. He's now a paramedic for the fire department, and that's his gig now.
Wow, good for him.
Has he hung up the keyboards?
Oh yeah, he hasn't played since Peter passed away.
Because of, or he had already been switching over to the new career?
I think. Well, I mean, yeah, it's safe to say because when Peter died, that was it for Typo Negative. But he was my gut feeling, and again, like this was never really, we never really discussed it or anything like that. But I always felt that Josh was like moving towards being like the Brian Wilson of Typo Negative.
Please explain, because I'm not up on my Beach Boys right now.
Okay, well, Brian Wilson, he stopped touring with the band and would just work on the records.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the band would go out and tour. And I had a feeling that's where Josh was going towards it.
I gotcha. All right. Last question from George, and you can skip over the GNR part because I asked that before.
George Savage of Long Island must have a ton of great Peter Steele stories from playing drums at Typo and being their drum tech.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy. Like I said earlier, Peter would have the craziest stories. He's there was a corner grocery store at the end of his block, and it's he would step out. He would just walk to the store, and something would happen to him. He got mugged.
He got mugged?
By who? I don't know by who. I just remember him telling me one night he was like, "Yeah, I got mugged yesterday." He had $1 on him or something like that.
Jeez. Oh, Peter's still
the guy mugged me.
Do you have maybe a quick funny positive Peter Steele story that you can think of?
A funny positive story?
Yeah, I mean, we all know of him on Jerry Springer.
My next guest is the lead singer of the popular alternative band Typo Negative, but he will also be featured in the August issue of Playgirl magazine, for which he posed nude.
Did you guys make fun of him about being in Playgirl and the fact that the size of his
yes.
dick is everywhere?
Yes, we did. When he got approached to do it, I mean, it's been mentioned in the press before, but when he told us that, he was, said that he got this offer to, being Playgirl, and we were all like, you got to do it. You have to do it. And we were like, people will talk about that for years. He was think of the press. We had no one was expecting, we were just thinking, girls will buy and Playgirl, not the other Democrats.
Sure. Did you read it? Did you look?
I mean, of course I saw it. Yeah. It was always awkward when I had to autograph it.
You had to autograph Peter's.
Yeah, it was they'd be like, "Oh, can you sign here?" It's like, "Can't I just sign the cover?" Oh no, it has to be on the centerfold. Yeah, I need you to autograph the centerfold.
But you're not Peter to do that. That's so funny. That's really funny. And pun intended, that's ballsy.
He took it in stride. Of course, he took it in stride.
Sure.
But I mean, it was funny. It was funny. It was awkward. It was,
It was perfect. It was Typo.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And here it is, 2018. People are still talking about it.
Absolutely, and we've been talking for quite a long time, and I mean, I appreciate all the time you've given us, but
it's cool.
I wouldn't want to let you go without you talking about what you have going on now, what we can expect from Johnny Kelly, hopefully in the immediate future.
Well, yesterday I just did drum tracks for Silvertune.
Okay.
We just all the drum tracks are done. They're recorded, and so now whatever got to do the editing, make the stems and stuff so that they can get sent up to New York, where the guys can finish the record. But next for me is Hookers and Blow has shows here in Texas next week.
All right.
2 weeks. 2 weeks? Like the weekend of Cinco de Mayo. So first weekend of May. Mm-hmm. We're playing here in Dallas. Mm-hmm. And then we have 2 shows in Houston. And then after that, the next thing that I have is one show with Pale Horse in New Jersey in July. Right now, May and June are pretty quiet. And then July starts, the end of July, I start up with Danzig.
We're going to Europe for like 10 days or something, couple of festival dates. And then we're playing, that ends in Vegas. We're playing that Psycho Las Vegas festival.
Are you going to be at the Misfits show in Jersey?
I don't know. I'm not sure. It depends if I have any other stuff going on that week.
Okay.
Like I wouldn't go up just for that.
Okay.
Fair
enough.
Like if there's whatever, like other work or other things going on, but I can't just go up to New York, just for a concert.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, the fact that you've been working with Danzig for so long.
I haven't seen them play yet. I haven't seen the Misfits, since Jerry and Doyle, since Glenn got back together with them. I haven't seen any of the shows. I'd like to. I'd like to see the show. So I'm hoping that some other stuff comes in and I'll go up to New York for a few days and catch it.
Cool. Actually, my George, who asked that last question, he flew from Long Island to Chicago for that Misfits reunion show.
The Riot Fest.
Yeah, for Riot Fest,
yeah.
Exactly. Not knowing that eventually they would come closer to us in Jersey, but which is ironically, flying to Chicago to see that show was cheaper than the tickets that we had to buy for the New Jersey show. So
really,
yeah. It was like really
wow.
cheap. Yeah, I kind of regret not going, but whatever. It is what it is.
I see that. Like with the when they did the Forum show, the tickets were pretty expensive too. Like not so much like the resellers and stuff. They're the ones that are killing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, even with me, I got my my handicap seats. I have a physical disability, so I can. Okay. So even the handicap seats, they're screwing us, but that was slightly less expensive. But still, I've never seen the Misfits, and I mean, for the first time I saw Danzig last year with you. But whether you come up for for the Misfits or next time you're around, I mean, I was working the night when Hookers and Blow played Blackthorn and Queens, so I mean, I gotta see. I got to see a real Hookers and Blow show. It's got to happen. Usually
we come up to New York. That's usually around like January, like right after the holidays.
All right.
We do that run, and that's been like an annual thing. Like do some play Connecticut and Massachusetts and New York, and then some sometimes Jersey and Philly, and but it's always like that region.
Right on.
Which is how I wound up in the band, playing up there.
It's all fate, just like how the studio around the corner from your childhood home. It's all fate for you.
Yeah.
Some good. I would like to think a lot of good fate. There was some bad fate in there, but I think overall the fact in 2018 that you're a part of so many legendary bands and continuing to make great music is just a testament to not just your playing ability, not even being able to read much music, but who you are as a person.
It's just being stubborn.
That too. Sure.
That's it. It's just a persistent stubbornness.
Sure. Well, I'm going to be stubborn in my quest to hopefully get Dizzy on the show one day. So I say this to all my guests: not only are you welcome back to talk maybe more about Danzig next time, maybe some cool Hookers and Blow stories, but if you want to come on as a co-host, just like Stud is doing today.
Okay.
Maybe you can be my co-host, and we can both interview Dizzy or someone else. Maybe that you feel that would be cool for my audience. As long as there's a GNR tie, my audience loves it. I love it.
Yeah.
So that's especially next time you're in town, I would love for you to come down in studio and meet you.
Sounds like fun.
Awesome, Stud. Unless you have any parting questions for Johnny.
No, this has been incredible, and Johnny, thank you for just being so gracious.
Thank you guys, man. I had a lot of fun.
Oh, and the best way for fans to keep in contact with you and keep track what's going on. I know on Twitter you're at Johnny Kelly 1313.
Yeah.
What's the best way? Is that the best way? Your Facebook?
Yeah, that's Facebook. Twitter, Instagram. It's all pretty much the same stuff. Like whatever, the Facebook is Johnny Kelly. The Instagram is Johnny Kelly 1313. I think it's the same as my Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But I'm not hard to find.
No, and Not hard to find, and you made it this just a pleasure, Johnny, and thanks for keeping in touch. And
I had a blast, man. Thank you for your time. This was a lot of fun.
I'm happy to hear you say that because I had a lot of fun too. And thanks so much. And enjoy your day.
You too. All right, I'll see you guys soon.
You got it. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So that was pretty rad, man. I hope you and your kids enjoyed talking to Johnny.
Oh, I had a blast, and I'm proud of myself for keeping my composure. I'm proud of my one of my kids for being relatively quiet. Apologize that if we ever do this again, I will make sure that my wife is not leaving, and if she does it quietly without the little one seeing, because that was a way to start the program.
I know. And again, I could go back and fix that, but I think Johnny appreciated that. And hopefully all of you appreciate that just for what it is. That's rock and roll. Sometimes a mistake is the best part of something. So it was
absolutely.
It was just pretty great. And just to get him on and talk to him for so long. And hopefully we get to talk to him again, so I appreciate Johnny. I appreciate you, Stud, for coming on, and the fact that I know we text every now and then, but, have this moment in our friendship, I think is something we'll always cherish.
We actually get to talk to each other. It's lovely. I feel better. I feel better. Today's a better day.
Oh, absolutely. But I also want to pay some, not just thanks to Johnny and thanks to John Muir, Studley boy. I want to say thanks to a couple of fans that reached out to me yesterday on my Facebook page, on the AFD Facebook page, which was just, I don't know, it was just pretty special to wake up to some of these messages. So first one I want to mention, because we talk about, yes, we asked questions a lot today from New York. We talked a lot about Brooklyn. I get it, but, when in Rome or when in Brooklyn, we got to talk about that stuff. But, we talk about fans from Ireland, from Argentina, from South America, from Spain. The amount of listeners from all over is just very overwhelming. And, GNR, of course, has fans all over, but for this little podcast to be 60 episodes in and, to be in English, to reach all these places, of course, like the Netherlands with Remco. But this one I got my first one from Greece. So I just want to say what's up to Connie. And he wrote this. He'll say, love the show. Greetings from Greece. And he's telling me stories about how he went to Prague to see GNR. So I'll just say, what's up, Connie? Really appreciate that. And the other one I want to say hi to is Brian Hi, Hy. So forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. He said, really enjoyed your interview with Tommy, bro. I've been lucky enough to have been friends with him for a lot of the time he was with Guns. He's genuinely a good guy, and you got him good. He necessarily doesn't enjoy the limelight, but he really enjoyed your interview. I could tell. That's what he said. So that means a lot. You didn't know. I wrote in my GNRforum.com when I was talking to some other GNR fans that I admit I was a bit timid talking to Tommy because I know his, every person I want to talk about what that they have going on now. But I guess with Guns, it's weird. It's just sometimes it's a sensitive subject, so I was a bit timid, and I just wanted to make sure that Tommy had a good experience. So for someone, his reps told me after the fact that he had a good experience, and they really appreciated it. But to hear that from a common friend is really cool. Oh, and one more. This is from another Brian, Brian Kindle, I want to say. He wrote this, and this is, as we mentioned before with you, Stud, that you've listened to all these episodes. Which is just unbelievable. We're friends though. You've known about this since the beginning. So, and even Finn has known about this, or Calder, whatever. You have too many kids.
It's fine.
It's all good. So, Brian writes this, Brando, I came across your podcast on the 6th of this month, so April 6th, so just not too long ago, and I've been binge listening at work and in the car over the past 2 weeks. The episodes have been amazing, and it can't get enough. So, and he's actually gave me a good interview suggestion, which maybe will come to fruition in a later episode, and I always put out there to the fans, if you want to suggest somebody, please do so. that's really going to help. Like with Jamie Hunting, who's going to be on coming up in a few episodes, who was with the Outsiders with West Arkeen, and the last recordings with Axl and Slash that we know of. That was the suggestion of my GNR forum. So this is all thanks to you, including you, Stud. Why I've been able to do 60, going on 61, 62. How long I'm going to be doing this? I don't know. As long as I keep getting messages like that and keep getting guests like Johnny Kelly and Tommy Stinson, I'm going to keep doing this this little GNR podcast. So just thanks to everybody for listening to episode 60. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter, both at the AFD Show or Facebook / the AFD Show if you're computer literate. You can also follow and subscribe on iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, of course, SoundCloud, Stitcher. Leave a review. I read those as well. I may have mentioned before that one of the reviews on iTunes had suggested getting Tyler Bryant on again. That should be happening in the future as well. So I do read. I do appreciate everything you say. So just, again, thank you. This was a big love fest. I feel a love fest, a love affair. I combined two words there. So again, if you have anything else you want to share before you go be a good father again, did you have to do anything crazy with your kids this episode? Any dirty diapers?
Yeah, actually, there was a diaper change mid-show. This is what the mute button is for.
Slow clap. Slow clap. That might be the first recorded poopy changing on the history of radio. I don't know. I don't know what Stern has done, but I think that adds a little something special, because you said you've done that while listening, but the fact that you did that while actually being a part of this show is something special. So thanks for everyone listening. Thanks for, thank you for Calder and Finn for being such great production assistants on this show. So
they will hear this when they're older, and I will tell them what they sounded like.
Incredible. Yeah, it's going to be on, it's going to be forever. It's going to be forever. Very cool. So,
Forever.
Yeah. So as far as the next episode of the AFD show is concerned, no kids, but in the words of Axl Rose concerning a Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it. 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 But you'll see it.